Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So today's subject is on what do we mean when we say charging up an item. So on a lot of the groups that I am on Facebook, the different pagan groups and stuff like that, there is some definite opinions about what this means or doesn't mean. There's a group of people that believe that you can't charge anything up, and I'm not sure exactly what their reasoning is to this, because it's easy to, there's things that you can charge with electricity without a problem, like a battery, for example. And certainly you can charge your own body up by rubbing your feet on the floor or a rug or whatever for a while and create a lot of static electricity, or using a balloon and rubbing it on your hair until your hair stands up, which is static electricity. So I'm not sure what their definition of charging is, and there are certain crystals for sure that have their own charge. Piezoelectrical crystals have got a charge of their own, and so there's that. We are electrically charged because we have a nervous system based on chemical transmission of signals through ions, positive and negative ions going through our body and sending signals from one part of our body to the other. So when we're talking about charging up an item with magical energy, the other thing that comes up a lot is the idea that all you need is intent. And this is, in my opinion, a fallacy. Intent is a component of doing a magical operation. There's no doubt about it. But there is a lot more to it, because just the intent, which could be as basic as I want to make more money, by itself just sort of sits there and really doesn't do anything. So using just your own willpower can get you to a certain point. You can definitely make a certain amount of influence and progress on your reality and help to shift the way you think and that kind of thing by using intent. But if you want to get consistent results, and if you want to learn like how to work with your own energy and with the energy of other things, then you need to expand your idea of what it means to charge something up. So for me, let's take crystals as a basic example. So I have this crystal. This is a green tiger eye crystal. And this crystal, in particular, is charged up to protect me when I wear it from negative energy and thought forms coming from other people. It doesn't protect me from like a car accident or somebody, doing something physically to me, perhaps. Maybe it does, I don't know. But still, it's geared towards more of the astral, thought form, energetic kinds of transmission of energy from other people that I pick up naturally as an empath, and it helps to keep me reminded that I have this is part of my personal shield, and it's there to enhance and boost the energetic shield that I have in place, and it sort of acts as a bit of a battery of its own in that sense. Now, there's a lot of talk about cleansing your crystals and charging your crystals, like in the moonlight, cleansing them with the earth or the water, or cleansing them with smoke and all this other stuff. And that's something I really don't feel the need to do as far as the cleansing part goes, because when you're putting the intent on the stone of what you want it to do, you can add different layers of intent. You can give it instructions. Basically, charging an object, part of it is giving a series of instructions on what kind of behavior you expect from this particular object, and then attaching an energy source to it or feeding an energy source into it that will allow it to perform the duties that you require of it. So, historically speaking, tiger eye has been used to protect the wearer from the evil eye for thousands of years. So there is a sort of a ready-made reservoir of energy that already exists in the ether for what this object is for. So picking this to do it makes it easier for me to program it and to use it the way I want. And that way I don't have to use just my own energy. I'm using historical attitudes, beliefs, the subconscious of the human race, the super unconscious, whatever you want to call it. All of that programmed attitude and expectation is there, and then I can take that and put it into the stone. So the issue with cleansing, like this is a stone I will probably never need to cleanse because it's programmed to do its specific duties, and it's not set up to absorb the energy but to like reflect the energy. So theoretically it should never absorb energy from someone coming at it, because that's not what it's supposed to do. It's not supposed to take it in. Like some people might use obsidian or tourmaline or whatever to absorb negative energy, smoky quartz. And if you're going to use a stone to absorb negative energy, you either have to give it an outlet, an automatic outlet, or you have to cleanse it. That would be the time that you would need to cleanse a crystal, would be if you have set it up to absorb energy that you don't want to keep around. If you've set it up to do a job and it's just doing its job, then I don't see personally the need to cleanse it. So the things that are involved in doing that, knowledge is important. You can do a lot without knowledge. You can do some stuff intuitively by the seat of your pants. There's no doubt about it. And sometimes that will work, especially if the universe has decided that this is a good idea for you and your spirit guides are on board with the whole process, and all of your life force energy is moving along in that general direction anyway, and it just sort of adds that extra little boost. But the best approach is to know what you're doing, and the more you know about the process or the energies you're working with and what you can expect, the more competent and capable and specific you can get with the energy. So research, talking to other people, finding out about historical correlations. Like, theoretically I could take any rock, I could pick it up out of the yard or whatever, and I could turn it into a protective talisman to wear to do the same thing that the tiger eye is doing. But then that would take more work on my part, because if I take a stone that's not already in general, its energy is not moved in that direction to start with, then I'm like starting from an either negative below zero kind of plane and have to build it up and then put it into the state I want it, or I'm starting off from like more of a neutral kind of a place, but again I have to bring it up to where I want it to be. So intent, you have to know what you want it to do. Knowledge, you have to know why it would do it, why it would work. Imagination, you have to be able to visualize what it is you want it to do. Since crystals and magical objects and things like that, they don't have a speaking voice like a human being. You can talk to a person and say, okay, here's a list of things I want you to do, and this is what you need to get done. Do whatever you need to do in order to do this. If you're doing this with an inanimate object, you have to like put all that in it to start with, because it doesn't have a natural resource of knowledge-based information like you might have in order to be able to succeed at the task that you're asking it to perform. So you have to think through the different steps that you're trying to get accomplished, and then figure out what sort of energy source is going to be best for this particular object to recharge itself, so that if the job you're asking it to do is going to deplete it. It's like it needs the source of energy so that it can keep on doing its job. Just like, you know, if you send out even the greatest athlete in the world and tell them they have to run for 50 miles without taking a break and without drinking any water, and at the end of it they're not allowed to eat, you're going to drain them, and eventually they're not going to be able to run. So you think about it logically when it comes to deciding that you want an object to have a job. A natural charge that an object will get, which people who are good at psychometry that can pick up, is, you can make something yours by using it, wearing it, holding it, thinking about it, touching it, painting it, molding it, manipulating it, decorating it, any of that kind of focused attention, just like we do with the brooms. Now, on their own, the brooms are just, brooms that were made in a factory. There's nothing particularly special about the broom. But if we do something to the broom, we decorate the broom, we spend energy on the broom, we think about all of the different historical information there is about the broom, what the broom does in general, and how we can make it do more on a different level than just cleaning a floor, then we've got the basis for charging up a broom, for example. And if it's your wand or your athame, or if you don't use those tools, and you are trying to pull in energy from another sphere in order to get your magic done, one of the purposes of drawing the circle and calling in the directions is to create that bubble, energetic bubble, that will allow you to build up a charge for whatever you're doing, whether you're charging a spell, whether you're charging a healing energy and sending it to someone who needs it, whatever it is you're focused on. Since energy is less dense than even air, then you use a certain kind of energy in order to contain it, so then you can build it up and then you can send it somewhere, and sending it where you want it to go is part of the intent. So imagination, knowledge, focus, concentration, the longer you can hold the idea, the instructions, the purpose of the object that you're making, the more complete the imprint will be on that object. And it's sort of interesting if you experiment around with trying to put certain things in stones. We've done that in our group a couple of times, where Ian and I have gotten together and we've charged up a stone with like joy or, some vivid emotion, and then passed the stone around and then watched how people reacted to the stone as they tried to figure out what was the energy that we put in the stone. And even the people who couldn't understand what the energy was would act differently when they were holding the stone. And so you could see directly the energetic effect that had on their aura and their energy field and so forth. And they would be giggling. When we did joy, people would be giggling and saying silly things and whatnot, and then not realizing that they were being affected by the energy in the stone. So, you can do your own experiments to, try and figure that out. But people are very prone to being influenced by their environment, and one of the more obvious ones to do is by changing the conversation in a room, by changing the kind of music that you play. That one's fascinating to me because I see that happen all the time, where it shifts over to a different group of music with completely different kind of feel, and usually within a couple of minutes the conversation of the guests that are at the party suddenly shifts over to that particular kind of energy, and people start talking about it. And you can see that happen even without music. In a restaurant, I've watched that happen, where a group of people start talking about a subject, and you can't really hear clearly what they're saying in particular, but you sort of pick up a word here and there, and then I'll notice that other people in the restaurant are picking up those words and they're starting to use them. And before you know it, there's a whole group of people in the restaurant that are all talking about similar things without consciously realizing that anyone else in the restaurant's talking about it because they're involved in their own conversation. And so, we are, as beings of energy to start with, as well as physical, we are influenced by our environment. And, you can see some of the ways, like the things that make you feel good, make your body feel better. If your mind and your heart feel good, your body has an easier time of doing whatever it is that it's tasked to do. And if your body is healthy, then it helps to affect your mind, and your feelings. And so, they're all kind of interconnected together. So I've shown you a bunch of my wands, and talked about some of the different kinds of energy that's out there that you can use to charge an item up with, which is why I made all those planetary wands, because that was a method for me to tune my energy into that energetic sphere, like tuning it into the solar sphere or the lunar sphere or the Saturnian sphere or the Mercury sphere, any of that kind of stuff. The associations that I have, the colors that mean something to me, and that are often universal or across cultures. So that is part of it. Like, I made a bunch of dream pillows once. I still have some, and I'm thinking of putting them on my site because they're still sitting around just hanging out after I did all this wonderful work researching and stuff. And when I did 3 types of dream pillows, one to chase nightmares away, one to bring quiet sleep, like, people who are having trouble sleeping, to help them get to sleep, and then one for bringing dreams about love, or make you feel, happy, kind of thing. And when I was doing research for what I wanted to put in them, I did cross-cultural research. I spent about 6 months just researching things and looking at stuff. And the plants and the herbs that I picked for each of the pillows were plants that had the same associations in multiple cultures around the planet, like roses with love. I used rose petals in my love pillow. It seems obvious, but I wanted to make sure that that was the case. And so I got, lists of correspondences, and then I did historical research on thoughts about, feelings about, and stories, myths about what this plant meant in the past to some, group of people. And then as I whittled out the ones that, like, in this culture, this was a really good plant. In this culture, this was a really bad plant. It had like the opposite kind of energy. I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to include that. So that's an example of some of the stuff that you can do when you're creating a magical item. You want to know as much as you can about it. Not so much that you can't ever get started, of course, because we can get lost in the details. But still, getting that broad range of stuff. And so by putting those ingredients together that already have that association, Ian's in the garage. He's making a banging sound. By having those things already there, then the thoughts about that come naturally, and then the energy it gets imbued in it. The other thing about charging is that charges over time can sort of dissipate if you're not using the item, if you're not paying attention to the item, unless you do something special to keep the energy sort of locked in place. And that's one of the reasons for wrapping tarot cards in silk. That's the real reason for wrapping silk around the tarot deck, is to keep the charge of the tarot cards contained, so it's not like just leaking out all over the place, and also to protect it from other people's energies, especially if you're the kind of reader that does only your own cards and you don't want anyone else to touch your deck and mix their energies in with it. So that's the reason for that. And understanding the reasons for things is like, you're 2 steps ahead if you can understand the purpose behind what they did and why they did it and how it works. So I'm trying to think of how else to approach this, because we're talking about how to, what charging means, not exactly how to do it, because, we've done a bunch of those. But so the more you can tune your own energy into the space of what you need, the easier that becomes. And your own personal attitudes and prejudices really play a part in this. Say, for example, if your thinking is along the lines that if anyone else ever touched this, it's bad, I can't use it anymore. I need to have things that are brand spanking new because I'm very, very sensitive and I'm going to be influenced by whatever energy was left behind by somebody else, then you're probably not going to be a kitchen witch. You're not going to be able to take, just an item of everyday use kind of thing that hasn't been used just for sacred purposes and then turn it into an emergency magical item. And that's not bad. It's just something to know about yourself. If you know that about yourself, then you buy things that are new. And some people who are very sensitive to that, not only are they worried about, getting something new that other people haven't used for any purpose, but they also want to get rid of the energy of anyone who ever touched it in the manufacturing process, while it was sitting on the shelf at the store, how many people picked it up and looked at it, and so forth. And those people definitely aren't going to be doing much shopping in Goodwill and the Salvation Army and secondhand stores, because those items are going to be filled with the energy of all of the people that had them in the past. So knowing those things about yourself is important if you're going to start trying to charge up an item, because you know what your baseline is. That doesn't mean you have to stay there. You can sometimes change those things when you're doing your shadow work, and if you get into the processes of restructuring your own subconscious. Me, I'm one of those people that in an emergency, if there's anything nearby, I can turn it into a magical item like now on the spot. Like a butter knife in the kitchen drawer becomes what I need as a magical tool. It's like, and so this works for me. So, I do it both ways. And that might be one of the reasons why I work with living tree spirits instead of with like wood that has been gifted by the tree and fallen on the ground. I like that interaction with the energy of the living spirit of the tree, and can work with it, and it likes working with me, so that works for us. This is not something that works for everyone. So we've talked in the video about sacredness, how to make something sacred. That's part of that process, is how you treat an item makes it sacred and also helps to charge it for magical purposes. So if you have something that you're working with and you want to keep it with you all the time because that helps to attune it to you, you find ways to wear it, keep it on you, put it in your pocket, or sleep with it under your pillow, or what have you. Being able to see your own energy helps, and being able to see other energy helps too, because working with your aura, you start to get that definite sense for what your energy feels like, and then how to transmit your energy. So when you're holding something and you're transmitting energy into it, like you would with making that invisible ball of energy between your hands, then you're telling the object to absorb the energy that you're giving to it. And then the thoughts that you're having while you do it is what programs the item that you're working with. So until we get some more really specific kind of questions that I can answer, that's sort of a general overview of what I'm talking about when I say charging an item. And when people just throw out all you need is intent, you don't need anything else, maybe in an emergency that could be true, but in general, it's not a good idea. It's kind of like draining your own battery over and over and over again until there's nothing left. And so, finding other sources of energy to charge things up is a good idea. And the more you know, the more capable you are of accomplishing this stuff. So I guess that'll be it for today. And this is Siofra Bradigan, and this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove. Blessed be.